Hello and welcome to Getting APIs to Work. In today's episode, I'll talk with Mike Amundsen about the Bezos API mandate, that famous mandate that happened almost 20 years ago now, but that you still hear a lot about. Hey, Mike, how are you doing?
All right, I'm doing great. It's kind of rainy here in Kentucky today, but it's spring and I'm in a good mood.
Same actually here. It's happening as well. It's raining, but that's fine. When we talk about the Bezos API mandate or the Bezos mandate, how often are you mentioning that? Because I mention it all the time.
It comes up a lot, especially certain points of it, but it definitely comes up a lot, and people connect with it at lots of different levels. I've had C-level people talk to me about it because they've read about it in Wall Street Journal or Harvard Business Review. I've had architect level, even developer level people talk about it. So it's actually pretty common, and I'm pretty impressed because it comes from just kind of an informal rant from one person, but it's had, like you say, this 20-year lifespan, so it's common.
It is a great story. I think that's one of the important bits, right? And there is a certain mystique around it. There is no official version of it, right? There's this one rant that you said that is preserved. I'll link it here in the video. That is preserved on GitHub. I think that's the oldest copy that I could find that I'm using. But yes, I think there is a certain mystique around it, and it also doesn't hurt that Bezos is the richest man on the planet, I guess.
Yep.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's something to it, right? It's always, of course, the question of, well, he's not the richest man on the planet because he did just that. But there is something to how this led to something else. And I'll let you say what that else thing is.
Something else? I'm not even sure. What did it lead to? It led to something else?
I would say Amazon Web Services.
Sure. Yeah.
That's usually my story, right? Where they built up these internal capabilities to run Amazon, the web store. And then over time, they realized that they have a pretty powerful machinery that they can also monetize. And then they were able to do that probably more easily than they could have done otherwise, right? It still probably wasn't quite as easy as just flipping a switch, right? And saying, now we sell that. But it was easier.
Yep. Yeah.
That's my favorite story around that.
Actually, that is a really, really good story, and I do think that's true. That this ethos that's encapsulated in this particular mandate is really one of the key elements to their success. And it's not the only one, like you say, but I think it makes lots of sense, and it's a really good point. And that's why people gravitate toward it, because they think, look, if I focus on this mandate, then I too can have a successful web store. I too can have a successful ecosystem. And that's kind of what we want, right? We want a successful API ecosystem.
Yes, we want this. And I think we want to have this ability to pivot into new markets, to capture opportunities that we see are happening. And the more we design the things that we create in a way that we can repurpose them and build on top of them, I think the more we are capable of doing that. What I wanted to do, I didn't get to do it actually, was to create a nicer version of the API mandate, because I think in the end you would need to hold it up, like the two stone slabs of the 10 commandments.
That's right. That's exactly right. That's good.
I just didn't have the time to carve them, but at least I created a little version here, like the Bezos API mandate. So yes. It is set in e-ink in this case, not in stone.
So let's get right to it. You have 5 points, right? What are the 5 points?
There are 5 of them, and I think it really is worth the effort to go through each of them separately and talk a little bit about what it means and also what the implications are. So let's start with the first one. The first one is data and capabilities must be exposed through APIs. This is kind of the fundamental one, right?
Yeah. So I mean, basically, the way I interpret that is, to keep it really simple, is if you're going to be accessing a service or data from some service, you've got to be doing it through some published API. You can't have any other kind of sneaky way around this. This is directly the first point, right? APIs are what drive our communications, right?
I would argue that's half of it. So yes, one half is that if you're accessing something, you must access it through APIs. But the other half, I think, is also that whatever you're building also must have APIs.
Good. Yeah, I get it.
That's the second half to me that also is pretty important, where you're saying whatever you're building must have the ability to then itself be used as a building block, which I think gives us this nice ability to stack things up, right? To build on other things that are there, because everything is designed and built for reuse.
Yeah. If it's important, it has an API, right?
Yes, of course, I'm sure that not everything is really available through APIs, even at Amazon. But like you say, right, the relevant things have to be. That to me is number one.
Number one.
Okay, number one. Let's move on to number two. Number two, team communications must be through APIs.
Okay, so
what does that tell you?
So the way I typically think of this is, if I need to learn about an API, it's going to be through the API or its documentation. My team can't sort of have a special secret summit with some other team to talk about this API in some other kind of way. The only way we're going to actually communicate is through this API or through this API product that has already been exposed, as if it was sort of like a product itself.
Yes, I think, I think there are two sides to it. One is what you said, right? Like if I want to collaborate with you as a team, I should be able to just look at what you're doing instead of having to schedule our "please tell me what you're doing" meeting. That's one thing. And then I think almost maybe just the implication of that is that I can just find out what you're doing. Even, I'm not sure yet if I want to use what you're doing. But since you have to be good at documenting what you're doing and allowing me to find it, right, I also have a much better chance of just figuring out what's around and seeing which building blocks I can actually use. I think that also becomes more and more apparent in large organizations with their landscapes getting bigger and bigger. And they have pretty much every organization that I talk to, they're saying, we have no idea what we have. It's like we have a lot of stuff, we know that, but we don't really know what we have.
I think this also goes to the story that inside Amazon, and Bezos in particular, hates meetings. Like, I don't want to have a meeting to be able to understand. I should be able to use your API, communicate through your API in order to learn what I need to know, right?
Yes, and I think in particular when you're looking for reuse, like meetings just don't scale very well.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
if I'm shooting for reuse and I want to have 100 other teams using my service, then I better do it in a way that I don't have to talk to these 100 teams, because otherwise I don't get any work done other than talking to other teams. Right. I think the scalability aspect of that is also pretty important.
Cool. Good. Okay, so that's two.
Team communications, right? That's very important. So number three, there can be no side channels.
Side channels. So no backdoors, no shortcuts. Sometimes people complain that, the API is clunky or it's slow or it's inefficient. If I could just get this one sort of special functionality built in, my team would be so much faster. And he's basically saying, no, the API is the API, and that's the whole of it, right?
Yeah, and I think he's also acknowledging with that building things without APIs sometimes can be faster initially, because you don't have to go through this process of designing and implementing the API, and then the other side of understanding the API and using it, but then it doesn't scale anymore. So
Right.
I think, the initial gain then actually becomes something that hurts scalability. And I think that third aspect of no side channels just means we're not taking those shortcuts because we know they will hurt us in the long run. That's my takeaway from that one.
That's good. I like that. That's good. Okay. So that's 3.
That's 3. Number 4, technology choice is secondary.
Wait a minute. So now that means that we don't all have to use the same format, or we don't have to all use GraphQL. We don't have to use REST, or like he's basically saying, in a way, I don't care about your technology choices as long as you are doing this team communications through API, data, and capabilities part, right?
Yeah, the important part is the communication path, right? That I am able to use what you're building without having to coordinate with you. The way that is made possible is probably also relevant, but it's not the most important part, right? And in the funny thing is, because his memo, and I think we didn't even mention that, is from 2002, so
Yes.
it's very old. And
Yes.
in his memo, or in the text that we have at least to look at, right, it even says in there it can even be Corba, which probably nowadays people wouldn't pick. Yeah,
Yep.
that's built on Corba interfaces. But I mean, back then, I think the general idea still was just like, it's not that important what technology you're choosing. The important part is that you're following this API thinking, so to speak, right? This API approach of making all these capabilities available.
Yeah, and I think there are some other sort of benefits, additional benefits from this, right? So by not building a platform based on technology, but based on these principles, you can take advantage of any technology you wish. And 20 years later, when some of the original technology you were using in the beginning isn't popular and has been superseded by something, your principles are still holding true. So I think this is a big lesson for especially the architect community that we deal with a lot of time. Don't get hung up on the technology. That's secondary. The primary is the principle, and I love that.
That's a very good point, actually, where, the way you phrase it now, saying that in the end, to make this technology agnostic is probably necessary to give it a long lifespan, right? Otherwise, it just would become outdated relatively quickly. And I think the nice part also is that it also kind of makes it easier to disengage with people who want to have really long and detailed technology discussions. And instead you can say, you know what, if it's so important for you to do it in GraphQL or whatever your technology of choice is, go for it. Just as long as you follow the law of the land.
That's right.
Right? We're good, right? You make it available, I can use it. And then people will probably gravitate towards certain patterns. I think that's what we always see, right? Like managing technology sprawl is not quite as problematic as people sometimes think it is. So yeah, I think that actually is a really nice way of framing this fourth point, that it makes clear that this is not about technology. This is not a short-term thing. This is a long-term strategic mandate.
Exactly. Okay, 4.
Now number 5, APIs must be externalizable.
So what do you think? What's your take on that?
I really like this word externalizable. And of course, we don't know whether he actually used it, but I like the way that, that it's always phrased like this. Just saying that if at some point it becomes important to expose this capability to partners, to the public, this should be possible. It's not something where you have to re-engineer and rebuild everything because you're saying, oh, we never thought this could possibly happen, right? It has to be something where you have to design for that possibility. In many cases, I'm sure Amazon has the vast majority of APIs of Amazon are not externalized, but the Amazon Web Services APIs are. right? And I think that kind of proves the point. Even though I just looked it up, Amazon Web Services still is, I think, around 12 or 13% of Amazon revenue. So
Yep.
it's small compared to the actual Amazon core business, but in absolute numbers, it's still a pretty significant business.
It's actually frightening. One of the things I like about this fifth point, and to do the same kind of reversal that we've done a couple of times, is when an API is externalizable. To me, it's saying, make it like an API as a product. Make it so that it's externalizable as a unit. It follows all these other principles, that the capabilities are exposed, team communications is through the API, there aren't any additional side channels or special dispensations. And that also means, I think, this is total speculation on my part, but I think it also means that even inside Amazon, each one of these APIs are treated as separate products, as externalized APIs. If I'm using the SAP API and I don't like it, I don't call up SAP and say, hey, can you change your data format? Can you give me a new API? I accept that as a product, as a packaged product, and deal with it. And I think that's one of the things that goes on at Amazon as well. Everyone just deals with the packaged product, the APIs they have. So everyone's externalizable, everyone's a third party, everyone's on this same level. And that gets us right back to that first point, which is data and capabilities exposed. So I think it to me, it sort of hints to, again, a wider ethos or set of principles inside Amazon, which is we're all at the same level here. We're all just exposing our APIs for other people to use.
And what you just said, I think, about everybody just deals with how it is, the API products and so forth. I think this is also very nicely reflected in these interviews with Werner Vogels, where he made these famous statements of saying, we have just one shot to get it right, because once it's out there, you can't take it back. It's just how it is. Yep. And that, to me, also is an important part of that fifth thing. When you think about it as externalizable as a product, you also have to think about your users, right? How well does it work for them? How can I explain it to them in a way that makes sense for them, even though I have to assume that they're not really familiar with the internals of how Amazon works, right? So I have to really think through it. How do I turn it into a useful and usable product? Because it might be handed to somebody who's not in the same domain that I am in. And I think that's an important part there.
Yep. That's a kind of statelessness, right? It's a kind of self-contained systems kind of attitude for each one of these APIs. Just like you said, I don't need to know other externalities. There are no other side channels I have to understand, right? This is all I need to understand right here through the API. I love that. Yeah.
And there are some interesting quotes in this recent article that was, I think, published by ACM. This 10 years later interview with Werner Vogels.
Oh,
where he also went through some of these design decisions where he said, we could have made it like this and like that, but we wanted to keep it simple, so we decided not to do it. And I think that is also a really interesting side effect of creating products, that you're focusing on how do I make it understandable and useful, and not how can I give it as many features as I can dream up. Right?
Yeah, and I think, I think I know the article you're referring to. I think one of the other things that comes out in that piece is they really followed that minimum viable product approach. Like, let's just do the minimum to solve our problem. Let's focus on getting that right before we consider anything else along the way as well, right? So it's not just that I don't want a lot of features. It's that I want a laser focus on the features that matter, and I keep that really small. And that's another thing that comes out through the Amazon ecosystem, which is they're constantly releasing what seem to be, minimum viable things. And you wonder, well, gee, there's lots of other products that do more, but they're almost, sneaky in the way they get this right at the base level, and then they build on it, which I think is another great lesson. It's sort of the principle of least power, right? Which a lot of the web standards were built on. Let's use the least powerful thing in order to solve the problem, and I like that a lot.
Yeah, that is probably something where if you become a little bit more experienced with APIs, that's probably a very good principle to follow, right? Like trying to come up with something that is just as powerful as you have to make it, and then you can make it as simple as you can make it, right? And that's kind of this interesting design point where you arrive.
Yeah.
That hopefully then is both useful and usable, which I think is sometimes this tricky balance to get right.
Definitely. All right. So that's it, right? 5 points.
That's it. 5 points here.
I love it.
The mandate. I'll
5 points. 5 points to build a multi-billion-dollar empire. That's all it takes.
Multi-billion is almost like aiming a little low there.
Wrong scale. Wrong factor.
Yeah. Amazon truly is amazing.
Yep.
Okay, so I think we've covered everything that we wanted to cover. I'm sure I will keep referring to that story also because it does have this little bit mystique to it that we discussed in the beginning, and there's a lot of really good stories and good, I think, outcomes that you can discuss when you talk about it.
Yep, I do. It will. I'm sure it will not disappear from my vocabulary, and hopefully this gives people a sense of some of the thinking behind it. But it like you said earlier, it's sort of become this mythos, and there are lots of interpretations, lots of observations, and I am looking forward to seeing so many more.
That's probably very true. If you look at it, you could probably there's I don't even know how you call it in English. Exegesis. What's the
exegesis? Yeah.
Exegesis, yes. Right? It's like different schools of thought, what it really means.
Yes. I love it.
But at least we found one for us, so that's good enough.
Works for me.
Yeah, for me as well. Thanks everybody for tuning in. I hope you liked it. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Thanks, Mike, for joining. I'm looking forward to our next little episode. But for now, I think talking about those laws was very interesting as well.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.